There's a financial crisis in America that almost nobody names correctly. It doesn't look like reckless spending. It doesn't look like luxury debts. It looks like a responsible adult with a job, a family, and a decent life on paper, quietly getting crushed between aging parents, rising costs, and kids who still need everything. And because it doesn't look dramatic from the outside, most people don't realize how dangerous it is until their savings are gone, the debt is up, and the pressure has already moved into every part of their life. To understand why this becomes such a brutal financial crisis, we need to look at why it stays hidden for so long, why the costs start earlier than families expect, and why so many people end up sacrificing their own future just to keep everyone else afloat. They're called the sandwich generation. Not a clinical term, just an honest one. It's what happens when you're somewhere in your late 30s, 40s, or early 50s, and you look left and your kids still need you. And you look right and so do your parents. And in the middle, there's you. Working, paying bills, holding the structure together. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, running out of room. This is not a story about people who made bad choices. That's the first thing you need to understand, because most financial content treats money problems like moral failures. Spent too much, saved too little, planned too poorly. And sometimes that's true, but that's not what's happening here. What's happening here looks like responsibility. It looks like someone who shows up. The kind of person the rest of the family calls first, not because they have the most money, but because they handle things. They've always handled things, and that reputation, earned, deserved, becomes part of the trap. This is what financial pressure looks like when it wears the mask of love. Picture what their life actually looks like. There's a mortgage or rent, a car payment, maybe two. Kids who are in school or nearly out of it, which means either the daily cost of raising them or the looming cost of launching them. College, a first apartment, the financial runway that parents feel obligated to help build. The household budget is real, it's stretched, and it has almost no cushion left. And then gradually the other pull begins. Mom's driving less, dad had a health scare. Someone needs a ride to an appointment, and then those appointments start happening every couple of weeks. A small repair goes undone at their house, and someone has to deal with it. A prescription costs more than expected. A doctor recommends a specialist, and the copay isn't small, nothing catastrophic. Just a steady accumulation of small things that require either time or money, and usually both. According to Pew Research, more than half of Americans in their 40s are simultaneously raising or supporting kids and managing responsibilities for an aging parent. Over half, which means this isn't a niche situation. It's the dominant financial reality for an enormous share of working American adults, and it almost never shows up in conversations about financial struggle because the people living it are too busy to complain and too proud to ask for help. Now here's where the lie enters. Most families tell themselves a version of the same story. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Right now, we're just helping out a little. And when things get serious, Medicare will step in. That story feels responsible. It feels measured, it's also quietly dangerous. Because by the time most families think they're approaching the crisis, the financial slide has usually already started. Medicare covers hospital stays, it covers doctor visits. What it does not cover, and this is the part that catches families completely off guard, is long-term care. Not the nursing home, not the home health aide who comes every morning. Not the assisted living facility. Not the daily, ongoing, custodial support that aging actually requires for most people eventually. That kind of care either comes from Medicaid, which means your parent has to spend down nearly everything they own first, or it comes from the family. And helping a little has a way of expanding to fill exactly as much as you can give, because the need doesn't pause and love doesn't come with a spending limit. By the time a family realizes the bridge they said they'd cross is already behind them, they've often been absorbing costs for years without naming them. And that's the piece most people miss entirely. The damage doesn't start with the catastrophe. It starts with the margins. Think about what those margins actually look like. An extra tank of gas each week driving to their parents' house. Groceries picked up because mom can't get out as easily. A copay covered, a prescription floated, a small home repair handled because it's faster to just do it than to figure out who else will. A workday cut short to make an appointment. An afternoon of unpaid caregiving that doesn't appear on any balance sheet, but absolutely costs something, in time, in energy, in missed income, in the slow erosion of capacity to deal with everything else. Family caregivers spend an average of over $7,000 a year out of pocket. That's the AARP's number, and it tracks the quiet, routine cost of showing up, not the dramatic medical bills, just the baseline of being the person who handles it. $7,000. For most families already carrying a full financial load, that's not an inconvenience. That's the margin they needed. That's the emergency fund they were building. That's the retirement contribution that didn't happen this year. And it doesn't stop there because the financial pressure has a companion. It travels with an emotional weight that makes the math even harder to solve. Guilt is one of the most underestimated financial forces in these families. The guilt of not doing more. The guilt of what you can't give. The low-level, chronic anxiety that comes from watching someone you love need things and knowing you're already at your limit. And underneath all of that, something most people in this position never say out loud: the resentment when they realize the weight isn't shared equally. Because it rarely is. In most families, one person ends up carrying the majority of it. Not because they volunteered, not because it was decided fairly, but because they were closest, or they said yes first, or they're the one who picks up the phone. The sibling who lives farther away, or who is going through something, or who simply doesn't engage, their absence doesn't reduce the need. It just redistributes the cost onto whoever stays. That person absorbs it in dollars. They absorb it in missed promotions, in career decisions made quietly so they can stay available, in the thousand small ways that prolonged, unacknowledged stress rewires how you spend, how you sleep, and how clearly you can think about money at all. There's one more layer to this that rarely makes it into the conversation, and it matters. Older adults are the most targeted demographic for financial fraud in the country. In 2024, the losses older Americans suffered from investment scams exceeded what they lost to any other type of fraud. And when a parent is losing a little sharpness, a little confidence, a little of their ability to evaluate situations the way they used to, the risk goes up. Not always from strangers, sometimes from people who know them. Sometimes the account is drained, or the deed is signed before anyone in the family understands what happened. And when that hits a family that was already stretched, already managing, already doing everything they could, it doesn't just create a financial problem. It creates a collapse on top of everything else they were carrying. This is what the sandwich generation is actually navigating. Not one problem, a system. A layered, compounding, slow-moving system of obligations and costs and emotional forces that most financial advice was never designed to address. The sandwich generation isn't being crushed by irresponsibility. It's being crushed by layered responsibility. Because mainstream personal finance is built around a simpler story. Spend less than you earn. Save for retirement, build an emergency fund. All of that is true. None of it accounts for a family where the emergency fund keeps getting used for someone else's emergencies, where the retirement contributions keep getting paused to cover someone else's care, where every decision involves not just your own financial future, but the immediate, undeniable needs of people you cannot bring yourself to walk away from. These people are not failing, let that be clear. They are living inside a financial structure that asks more than most budgets can hold, and they're doing it without a map, without policy support, and without anyone naming it honestly enough to help them. So what actually helps? The first thing is the conversation most families are avoiding. Not a vague check-in about how mom is doing. A real conversation about what your parents have, what care might cost, what's in place and what isn't, and who in the family is going to carry what. It's uncomfortable. It's worth doing years before you think you need to. Waiting until there's a crisis means making every decision under pressure, and pressure is expensive. The second thing is putting a real number on what you're spending. The caregiving costs that are quietly bleeding into your budget right now, the gas, the groceries, the copays, the afternoons, the lost hours, add them up and treat them like a line item. You cannot make decisions about something you've never quantified. Naming it doesn't make it go away. But it stops it from being invisible, and invisible is how it does the most damage. The third thing is protecting your own financial floor before it disappears. That might mean a direct, honest conversation with siblings about sharing costs equitably. It might mean researching what assistance your parents actually qualify for, local programs, state resources, federal benefits that most families never look into because they assume there's nothing available. And it might mean saying no to something, or saying not this much, and sitting with the discomfort of that long enough to understand that your own financial collapse does not help the people you love. It just adds one more person to the list of people who need help. Because that's what this generation carries, and it's heavy. There is no medal for being the one who held everything together until there was nothing left of you to hold. No financial framework built for ordinary families fully accounts for the cost of being needed by everyone at once. From the outside, it looks like normal life. It looks like love, it looks like responsibility. But for millions of families, that quiet pressure is already deciding what their future will cost. What they're feeling is not personal failure. It is the weight of a crisis that has been treated as normal for far too long. And if this is your reality or your family's, I want to know, what's been the hardest part for you? Helping your kids, helping your parents, or trying not to lose your own future in the middle of it?